Welcome to the 7th grade civics lesson on Enlightenment ideas. For this video, we will be focusing on Standard 1.1, recognizing how Enlightenment ideas, including Montesquieu's view of separation of power and Locke's theories related to natural law and how Locke's social contract influenced the Founding Fathers. For this lesson, you will need notebook paper and a writing utensil to answer questions and take notes. If you joined us for our last video, have your notes in independent practice to review. During our last video, we explored international conflicts. Your independent task was to write about this concept circle and explain how the four terms fit together. Your terms were war, peacekeeping operations, humanitarian efforts, and conflict resolution. The United States has been involved in many international conflicts dealing with all four terms. Peacekeeping operations are ways to help to create lasting peace, which is similar to conflict resolution, which is to negotiate to resolve a disagreement. Humanitarian efforts are to save lives, alleviate suffering, and maintain humanity. Your answers should have reflected these definitions and could vary on how you made connections. Now let's discuss Enlightenment ideas. Enlightenment ideas are ideas that came from European and American thinkers in the late 17th and 18th centuries that included new ways of thinking. Enlightenment ideas are important because they shaped future thoughts, many that are still around today. The main idea of the Enlightenment was the importance of learning and reasoning. Enlightenment thinkers believed education would solve society's problems. These thinkers focused on the relationship between government and the people being governed. Their ideas included separation of powers, natural law, and the social contract. The first idea is separation of powers. It means that powers in government are divided into three branches, giving each branch its own responsibilities. This was a new idea in Europe because most governments had one person with all of the power, like a king or queen. The ideas of checks and balances allowed each branch to limit the powers of other branches. Montesquieu was the Enlightenment thinker that came up with the idea of separation of powers. The three branches that he created were legislative, to make laws, executive, to carry out laws, and judicial, to interpret the laws. The next idea that came out of the Enlightenment period was natural law. Natural law is the idea that all human beings are born with and entitled to certain rights, such as life and freedom. Natural law is universal, which means that these rights are guaranteed to everyone simply because they are born. Locke and Montesquieu believed that government, laws, and actions must respect natural rights and reflect natural law. The third Enlightenment idea was social contract. Both Locke and Montesquieu believed in the idea of social contract. A social contract is created when an organized society agrees on the relationship between the government and the people. This relationship defines the rights and duties of the people and the limits and responsibilities of the government. John Locke believed that the ruler received powers from the people that they govern. Locke believed the purpose for the social contract was to protect individual rights, and it was a contract between a ruler and his people. He also believed that natural law guaranteed life, liberty, and property. The United States grew into 13 colonies from English settlements in North America. The King of England and Parliament governed the colonies. The colonists believed that the kings and Parliament violated their individual liberties. This means that the colonists' ability to live as free and independent people was not being protected. Some colonists decided to speak out about wanting to separate from the English government. They wanted to create their own government. Representatives from each of the 13 colonies met and wrote a document listing their reasons for separation. These representatives are known as the Founding Fathers or founders. Many of the founders' views on the purpose of government included Enlightenment ideas such as separation of powers, natural law, and social contract. Let's practice what you just learned. Which term below is a period in European history when many educated people stressed the importance of learning and reasoning? Is it Enlightenment or natural law? Enlightenment is the correct answer. Next practice question. Laws passed by government to protect natural rights. Is it liberties or natural law? The correct response is natural law. Let's keep going with our vocabulary practice. What is a person's ability to be free and independent? Is it social contract or individual liberties? The correct term is individual liberties. Next question is an implied agreement among the people of an organized society that defines the rights, duties, and limitations of the governed and government, a social contract, or natural rights. If you chose social contract, you are correct. This practice question describes the belief that individuals are born with basic rights that cannot be taken away by governments. Is it describing checks and balances or natural rights? The correct response is natural rights. Next practice question. A principle of the federal government according to the U.S. Constitution that allows each branch of government to limit the power of other branches is what term? Natural law or checks and balances? Checks and balances is the correct response. Our last vocabulary practice question of the lesson. Is it separation of powers or social contract that is the structure of the federal government according to the U.S. Constitution that sets up the three branches with their own distinct powers and responsibilities? Separation of powers is the correct answer. Show what you know with these multiple choice questions. Question 1 asks, which Enlightenment idea is represented by the following image? Is it A, natural law, B, social contract, C, checks and balances, or D, separation of powers? The correct answer is D, separation of powers. Did you guess checks and balances? That was a good choice, but the image shows each branch's responsibilities, not how the three branches check each other. The next question is tough. Can you answer it correctly? Use the knowledge you already know about civics to help. How are the Enlightenment ideas that influenced the Founding Fathers reflected in modern institutions? Is it A, colonies have been reestablished to preserve popular sovereignty? B, oligarchies have increased to safeguard natural rights? C, the United Nations promotes universal human rights? Or D, the European Union encourages economic stability? The correct answer is C. The United Nations promotes universal human rights. The United Nations was formed to promote universal human rights during World War II. Promoting universal human rights reflects the Enlightenment idea of natural law. To continue your practice on the influence of Enlightenment ideas, work on this concept circle independently. Write about your understanding by explaining the connections between each of the terms in the concept circle. The terms in the circle are separation of powers, social contract, natural rights, and natural law. Answer: how do these terms in the concept circle fit together? Your answer should be 2 to 3 sentences. Thanks for joining and learning about civics. Our lesson content was provided by Civics 360. If you have an electronic device, visit civics360.org for more activities and practice.